This Sunday, we get to meet a guy named Elijah, and then 2 days after this Sunday, you're all going to vote, right? Okay, that's what's going on this Sunday. In case you weren't tracking, Reverend Thorne, Reverend Keat, Word Made Fresh show where we talk about Bible and stuff. Okay, Adrian, you're preaching on Sunday. It's Elijah's debut. This is the
Yes,
first time we meet Elijah in the entire Bible,
yes,
and there's an election literally minutes away.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
let's just start with how do you even approach a pulpit at a moment like this? Are you going to talk about the election? Will it be an
Oh,
undercurrent? How do you just what are you holding with this?
yes. So without a doubt, we'll be talking about the election. I mean, how could you not? Especially in our congregation, and I think in this city. But for this election, I don't see how anyone gets in a pulpit and doesn't mention it. I think the text gives us some interesting ways in. This notion, I think, of Elijah being by this wadi, this little stream where he's cared for, where a bird brings him food and drink, is very comforting. I think we're all looking for some comfort. We will be looking for some comfort on that morning, and in the days following. They're saying we probably won't get the results of the election till this Saturday after. I think that was the case with Biden. Um, I think there's comfort in knowing that we will be taken care of. And then, of course, you flip to the second half of the story with the widow, who's got just a small amount of meal and a small amount of oil, but Elijah works a miracle, and she's able to um, live on what she has for a length of time. I think there's comfort in that one too. I think we get some kind of comfort food scripture this Sunday before the election that maybe the good things in our lives or the things that give us sustenance or that are very necessary and needed parts of sustaining us are not going to run out. So I think that's an encouragement.
That's definitely an encouragement anytime, but especially as people are approaching November 5th with all sorts of emotions.
Yeah.
If you're when you're this, but when you preach, you're not just preaching this text, but you're preaching the text of the people in the room and in the space, however they're engaging it. And all of us are going to be holding this bated breath, looking at the countdown of, and knowing, like you said, that will we have the results on election night or the next day? Chances are probably not. So we need that comfort food. We need that sustenance in those dry or drought places. Yeah.
Right. I think the other thing is, you know, I think Americans are always and often accused of navel gazing. I think we also have to pull the
Yep.
lens out and remember
Yep.
there's so many things going on in the world beyond our own election. And certainly this election is critical and does impact, I think, globally uh, things in the world. But I'm thinking about this food and this provision in light of so many places in the world where people are starving and worried about, life itself. So when we think about the Sudan and we think about Congo and then the escalating war in the Middle East, what's happening in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Yemen, that whole just Netanyahu nastiness and nuttiness, um, takes us in a completely different direction because we know there are people for whom the oil and the meal have run out long, long ago, and there are just some really cruel, I would say, evil, sadistic folks out there who are hell bent to make sure that um, stays the case. And so
Yeah.
you juxtapose that with this text, and takes you to a more heartbreaking and not comforting place.
Yeah.
So that's
Not
another.
not everyone gets their Elijah. Not everyone gets someone coming to turn their little meal into unlimited loaves of bread. Not everyone has the birds bringing them the food in the morning to
Right,
sustain them.
right.
Uh, that's almost I find that to be one of the hardest parts of
Yeah,
these miracle stories. Which,
yeah.
by the way, myth, legend, history. What are we reading here? That's a question itself. There's a lot we can go into on that. But the reality is, we're going to read this story about a
Mhm.
guy who gets his food in the midst of famine,
Yeah,
this widow who has her food multiplied in the midst of
right,
despair.
right.
What about the people who don't? Where are
Exactly,
their miracles? Uh,
exactly.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
always the hardest one to sit with.
that's the hard part. I mean, it's like, going into this land that God has given you, getting this food that the birds are bringing you. We've always got to be asking ourselves, what about the people who were in the land before we arrived? What about the people who are not eating while we are? The people who are, weeping and gnashing their teeth while we're celebrating and praising. Because certainly when we're on the other side of this, um, we want people to notice and be mindful of our suffering. So there's always it keeps turning. There's always another side. There's always an underbelly to the good things, to the good
Yeah.
times. Yeah,
Now, to go Bible geek on it for just a hot minute because I can't help myself sometimes.
sure.
One thing I read about this is that this is the first introduction to Elijah, and we just had a whole round with Ahab, one of the bad kings, and their worship of Baal and all that. And one of the contrasts that some scholars say is being shown here is Baal was thought to be the god who controlled the thunder and the rain and life and death. And so now in this Elijah narrative, Elijah's like, it's going to stop raining. So your God who's in charge of the rain isn't quite as powerful as you thought, apparently. And even in the midst of that, Yahweh's the one who provides. Yahweh's the one who allows for life. And the second half of the chapter has the widow's son dying and then coming back to life. So you could ask, did these stories happen? You're missing the point. These stories are making a point about Yahweh in contrast to the other gods. Kind of like, the plagues in Exodus, where it was, the God of Israel versus the God of Egypt and showing whose God is bigger kind of a thing. So to me, that's a way of holding it that doesn't turn into where's my Elijah, where's my miracle. This is a narrative that says the God that we see throughout these scriptures is always going to be the one who's holding things, not the powers that be that seem to be running the show. Nope, God's still somehow holding all of this chaos together.
Yes, and that is an excellent point because I think one thing we need to pay attention to as we're being introduced to Elijah this week is how high he's riding with God and all that God is doing until he's
Oh
not
yeah.
high. And then Elijah is a little depressed, right?
Yep, yep.
And such a great character because he just is like, kill me now, right? Because things aren't going well because like I said, it always is turning. There's always another side, a day when there aren't any miracles, a moment when it appears that God is not present. And Elijah's a little puffed up and
Yeah.
thinking God is always going to show up in a particular way, and that he's always going to be on the winning side.
Yeah.
But walking with God does not mean that we will never lose, doesn't mean that
Yeah.
we'll never weep tears.
Mm.
But that we will never be left alone is for sure. So it's interesting to watch Elijah's journey. Yeah.
There's a lot of, I think we can see ourselves in that journey a lot, whether
Yes.
you have in whatever stage of life it might be, or hopes you have for political leaders and all these
Right.
things. It can lead you to all those ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it reminds you to it can be tempting, I think, for the focus to be in the wrong place as opposed to it being on God. So yes, this election is happening, and yes, terrible things are happening in the world. Also, wonderful things are happening in the world. People are being born, and people are getting married, and we are having prayers answered in the midst of what can sometimes feel like an absence of God. But in the midst of that, I think the focus is again on this God who journeys with us and never leaves us.
So this coming Tuesday after Sunday, November 5th, Election Day, uh,
Hmm.
people are going to be voting. Go, everyone
Hmm.
vote, make a plan to vote, encourage people to vote. But then we have some things happening at Riverside. Can
Yep,
you say a
yep.
bit more about what kind of space we're holding? I almost think of that as like Elijah being present with the widow in distress. We're trying to create a place to be present with people in whatever we're feeling. What are we hosting and holding in the building that Tuesday at Riverside?
Yeah. So we've been living in this faith over fear event probably since the summer, just wanting to offer the community in the church and in the larger neighborhood opportunities to engage their faith over their fear. So different body, mind, and spirit practices, ways to educate ourselves, ways to advocate for ourselves and others. Um, so ways to engage intellectually, physically, and spiritually. So on election day, we just had this image of people sitting home watching the election results by themselves and thought, oh, no, 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 that's not a good idea. Let's see if we can all gather in community and be together as the returns are coming in. So if you register, we ask that you register so that we can make sure we have enough materials. We're going to get together starting at 6:30. We'll have a nice comfort food dinner. There will be masseuses present to do 15-minute chair massages. One of our interns from Union Theological Seminary, Kathy Lynn, is going to be leading us in a creative art project for those of us who need to, just try to imagine possibilities. Our interim music director, Alan Montgomery, will be leading a hymn sing. So different ways for us to express and embody and help to, I think, manage and relieve some of our stress. And we'll watch the results coming in for those who want to. If you'd like to just kind of pretend that that's not happening and just have some good food and a massage, you're welcome to do that as well. But we thought, what better time to be together in faithful community than as we're watching this very momentous event unfold.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the moments when you definitely need to have someone you can be connected to rather than just be in whatever state by yourself. Whether you are weeping or rejoicing, you need to
That's
have
right.
someone to be present with those emotions and those moments.
Yeah.
So everyone watching, this is in the building, so if you're in the New York area, get yourself to church for this. Go to our website to register. I'll put the exact link on screen here and down in the description so you can do all the things and sign yourself up and join us. That's Tuesday. So that's after the sermon. So be sure we'd love to have you join us for worship on Sunday, November 2nd. We have another fantastic day at Riverside. The sermon will always continue to move us and speak to us in all the ways we need or didn't even know we needed. It's always crazy. What do you say on the precipice of a big election like this? It's like, and we'll see what happens. It's just a weird.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. And then I think also as people of faith, it really is an invitation for us to lean
Yeah.
into what we say we believe. This election is going to happen. Humans are going to do what humans do.
Yep.
But whether it's in Elijah's time or our time, God is still God. The universe will keep spinning. As powerful as people are, we don't have control over certain things.
Yeah.
And I know that we're anxious, and I know that people are frightened on many sides of this political situation.
Yep.
But for people of faith, God is the God of the universe, right? This president is the president of the United States, not suggesting that it won't have impacts on our lives, our perspectives,
Yeah.
our fear, our celebration. But there is a bigger, there's a bigger
Yeah.
force at play.
Okay. That is the last word I think we all need to sit with. So that if that doesn't make it into the sermon, that's a sermon we just got right there, and that'll preach this day, every day, up to the election and beyond.
And beyond.
Join us Sunday. 10:30 is when the carillon starts playing some music and the organ for the prelude. Worship liturgy kind of gets rolling closer to 11. Join us in the room online, trcnyc.org to find out more. Open Bible study is happening 9:30 a.m. and we are back looking at the lectionary text. So join us on Zoom or in the room for open Bible study. After worship, we'll have virtual coffee hour online, good old-fashioned coffee hour in the building. So lots of ways to stay connected and fellowship and be a part of what's happening. And something else, yes.
And this week, Space for Grace. So the day after the election, we have Space for Grace. So however you're feeling, however things have started to shake out, come back together with us again on Wednesdays. Dinner is at 6:30. And worship is at 7. Another wonderful opportunity to be in community, on site and online.
Yeah. So you don't have no excuse for being alone this week. We've got you covered. Lots of ways to stay connected. Can't wait to have you join us, and we will talk more about Jonah on the next one.